Hey, this is Off the Cuff, and I'm Steve from TorahFamily.org. Life gets pretty busy at times, and even when it's not busy, it's still so easy to forget that we're in the middle of a war. And sometimes I think it's like we need some like spiritual sunglasses or something to put on to let us see all the spiritual battles going on all around us. Something just to like be a reminder and to show us what Peter was trying to tell us in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. He said, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour." Do you ever think about what this verse looks like? Seriously, like it or not, we really are in the middle of a war. And war is not pretty. Just because we can't see it in the physical, it doesn't mean it's not going on all around us. In the physical, there's no mistaking being in a war zone. The snapping of bullets, zipping by your head, the whistling of incoming bombs, explosions and shrapnel piercing everywhere, the ground beneath you shaking, combat aircraft thrusting by so fast and loud that you literally feel your insides shaking within, wounded and dead people all around. War. It's kill or be killed. For those of us who have never been there personally, we can only go on what the movies show or what games present it as. But ask anyone who has been there in real life, and they'll tell you it's not pleasant. In fact, the common referral is it's hell. But what about spiritual warfare? Have we ever thought about what that looks like? What's it sound like? How do we know when to take cover or attack? How do we discern these kinds of questions? Because they're important. Have you ever considered this? Shouldn't we consider this? Because we're all in this war. We have to ask just where we stand in it. Are we on the front lines? Are we in the medical ward? Do we even know our position? Are we sure it's the enemy we're firing at? Or could we be attacking our very own people? Could it be that we're in the green zone? That being, the safe area, if you will, from the enemy's attacks. If so, please remember, if there are not enough fighters on the front lines, there will be no green zone. The front lines will be right in front of us before we know it. 2 Corinthians chapter 10. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. Because the war we fight is spiritual, we tend to spiritualize everything about that war. And though the enemy we fight is indeed spiritual, don't get me wrong, that which he uses against us can be that of the physical just the same. In fact, as things intensify, we shouldn't be surprised if the war crosses over into the physical more often than not. We can't believe that followers today will never be tested for their faith like those of previous centuries. To somehow think that today we are immune from what believers before us had to undergo just doesn't add up. In reality, some are going through tribulation and persecutions for their faith in Messiah in other countries all over the world right now. The term front lines of the war has a completely different meaning for them compared to many others. Are you willing to die for your faith? Now, what about being tortured for your faith. Everyone likes to refer to Hebrews chapter 11 regarding those who were commended for their faith and the great deeds they had done through faith. But very rarely do we see a pastor or a preacher or a teacher of any kind elaborate on verses 35 through 38 of Hebrews 11. They read, "Women received back their dead, raised to life again. Others were tortured and refused to be released so that they might gain a better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging, while still others were chained and put in prison. They were stoned. They were sawed in two. They were put to death by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and holes in the ground. The world was not worthy of them." What a way to view it. Can this be said of you? It must be noted that these believers went through hell, if you will, and it wasn't the end times. It's believed that all the disciples, except for John, were martyred. Again, it wasn't the end times. How many martyrs of the faith have there been thus far through history? All while never being in the end times. And yet now that it would seem we could be nearing the end times, so many hold to a belief that they will never have to undergo persecution for their faith. However, only one of 7 fellowships in Revelation will be protected from the dragon in the end times. Only one was promised they would not see the time of testing. Only one. The Church of Philadelphia. Revelation 3:10. "Since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come upon the whole world, to test those who live on the earth." Of course, every church claims to be the Church of Philadelphia today. But what if, just what if, you are not a part of that church given this promise and are left to undergo the testing of your faith at the hands of the dragon? Revelation 12:17 says, "Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring, those who obey God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus." And Revelation 14, verses 12 and 13. This calls for patient endurance on the part of the saints who obey God's commandments and remain faithful to Jesus. "Then I heard a voice from heaven say, 'Write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on.' Yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them." But let's say we're nowhere near the end times, because we may not be. We don't know. The question is still, are you willing to die for your faith or even be tortured for your faith? All of the martyrs of the faith thus far was not living in the book of Revelation. Yet they experienced death and torture just the same. What if this would happen to you in your lifetime? Would you make it? Would you stand? Would you be considered one that the world was not worthy of? We're in a war. Are you on the front lines? Or even behind enemy lines? Or are you taking it easy in the green zone? Time can no longer be wasted. It's time to live like you mean it. It's time to live life on purpose. 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober, Be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. We're at war. Accuracy in life is needed. Let's not throw any shots. Think about it. Pray about it. But more than anything, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only. Until next time, shalom.